Commander Kelethon stood on the bridge of her ship, staring out at the stars. She had been doing this for 30 years, watching the peaceful darkness of space. But tonight the stars were disappearing. One by one they blinked out, replaced by something dark and terrible. Her home planet, Valar Prime, glowed below her ship. The oceans were full of light, millions of her people living in crystal cities beneath the waves. The Valari had lived in peace for 300 years. They built things, they created art, they talked instead of fought, or was something they read about in old history files, something their ancestors did before they learned better. Kelethon's hands shook as she gripped the railing. She was not built for this. None of them were. "Commander," her science officer Mirsolis said quietly. His voice had the sound of someone trying to stay calm when everything inside was screaming. "The calculations are complete. 6 hours, maybe 7 if we're lucky. 6 hours until the Devourers reached her world. 6 hours until everything ended. The Devourers were machines, but not like any machine the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't want to conquer. They didn't want to rule. They just wanted to consume. Everything. Planets, ships, stations, people. They broke it all down into energy and used that energy to make more of themselves. They had already destroyed 6 worlds. 6 entire civilizations gone as if they never existed. The Galactic Coalition had sent fleets to stop them. Beautiful ships with elegant weapons and smart tactics. Every fleet had been destroyed. The Devourers learned too fast. They adapted to every weapon, every strategy. What worked once never worked twice. Kelethon's own fleet had tried to hold them at the outer colonies. They had 40 ships, the best the Valari could build. Now she had 12. The rest were debris floating in the dark. "Commander," her communications officer Pelnara called out. She was young, barely 20 cycles old. Her voice cracked with fear. "The Coalition command says no reinforcements are available. We're on our own. On our own." The words felt like stones dropping into deep water. Kelethon closed her eyes. In her mind she saw her daughter, safe in the underwater city with her mother. She saw her son, who wanted to be a musician. She saw millions of people who trusted her to protect them, and she had failed. But then another thought came to her. A dark thought. A desperate thought. There was one more option. One last message she could send. "Pelnara," she said slowly. "Open the restricted files. Authorization Kelethon 77 Blue." The young officer looked at her with wide eyes. "Commander, those files are sealed by council order." "Open them." Pelnara's fingers moved across her console. A file appeared on the main screen. At the top, in red letters that seemed to pulse with warning, were 2 words. Earth. Humanity. Mirsolis sucked in a breath. "Commander, no. You can't be serious." But Kelethon was already reading the file. She had looked at it before, years ago, when the council made their decision. She remembered being afraid then. Now that fear seemed small and foolish. 20 years ago, humanity had asked to join the Galactic Coalition. They had discovered faster-than-light travel. They had unified their planet. They had sent ambassadors with gifts and offers of friendship. They seemed ready to join the community of civilized species. Then the evaluation teams went to Earth and came back terrified. Earth was classified as a Deathworld Class 12. The highest danger rating ever recorded. The gravity was crushing. The weather could kill you in minutes. The native animals were monsters. Diseases that would destroy most species were common. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, tsunamis. The entire planet was a death trap, and humans had evolved there. They survived there. They became the dominant species on a world that was constantly trying to murder them. The evaluation teams watched recordings of human history. Thousands of years of warfare, weapons that could destroy cities, tactics that showed a deep understanding of violence, bodies designed for endurance and aggression, minds that saw threats everywhere and planned accordingly. The Coalition Council voted. The answer was no. Humanity was too dangerous, too violent, too militaristic. They would disrupt the peace. They would bring war. The human ambassadors had listened quietly. They didn't argue. They didn't threaten. They just thanked the council for their time, went home, and closed their borders. For 20 years, humanity stayed in their own solar system. They didn't call. They didn't visit. They were alone, and the Coalition told themselves they had made the right choice. Kelethon read through the tactical assessments. Human military doctrine focused on overwhelming force and aggressive action. Their ships were built like fortresses. covered in thick armor instead of energy shields. Their weapons were primitive but devastatingly effective. Mass drivers that fired solid slugs at incredible speeds. Nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons. Weapons designed to kill other humans on their nightmare world. And their soldiers. Oh, their soldiers. The file had videos of human Marines training. They ran for hours in full armor. They fought in deserts where the heat would cook most species alive. They swam through freezing water. They jumped from aircraft and landed in hostile territory. They did all of this on their high-gravity world, which meant they were training with weights that would crush a Volari. The humans called it normal. Mir Solis was reading over her shoulder. "Commander, these creatures are monsters. The Council was right to reject them, are they?" Kelethon asked quietly. "Or are they just survivors? Everything on their world tried to kill them, so they learned to fight back. They became strong because they had to be strong. They became aggressive because the gentle ones died." She thought about her own people. The Volari had evolved in peaceful oceans. No major predators, plenty of food, mild weather. They grew up in paradise, so they became philosophers and artists. They didn't need to learn how to fight because nothing ever attacked them. Until now. The Council called them dangerous. Kelethon said. They were right. Humans are dangerous, but maybe that's exactly what we need right now. She walked to the communications console. Her hands were steady now. She had made her choice. "Pelnara, prepare a message. Long-range transmission to Earth, maximum power. Commander," Vrenzala, her tactical officer, spoke up. "If you do this, the Council will never forgive you. Contacting a prohibited species is a serious violation." Kelethon laughed, and it sounded bitter even to her own ears. "In 6 hours, there won't be a council. There won't be anything. I'd rather break every rule and have a chance than follow them all and die with honor." She began to record her message. She didn't know if humans would even listen. They had been rejected, ignored, isolated for 2 decades. They had every reason to let the galaxy burn, but she had to try. "To humanity," she said. "My name is Commander Kelethon of the Volari people. You don't know us. We are part of the Galactic Coalition, the alliance of species that rejected your application for membership 20 years ago." She paused, forcing herself to continue. "We were wrong. We called you dangerous. We called you violent. We were afraid of you, and now we are dying, and we have nowhere else to turn." On the view screen, the Devourers were getting closer. She could see them now. Thousands of black geometric shapes moving through space like a swarm of insects. "There is an enemy attacking us. We call them the Devourers. They are machines that consume everything. They have destroyed 6 of our worlds. They have killed billions. Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons are useless. They adapt to everything we do." Her voice cracked, and she didn't bother to hide it. "In a few hours, they will reach my home. Millions of people will die. My family will die. My civilization will end, and I don't know what to do. I'm a commander, and I don't know how to save my people." She looked directly at the camera as if she could see the humans on the other side. "We rejected you because we were afraid, because you came from a world of death and violence, because you knew how to fight and we didn't want fighting in our peaceful galaxy. But now I understand. You learned to fight because you had to. You became warriors because your world demanded it." Tears ran down her face, glowing with bioluminescence. "We have no right to ask you for help. We turned you away. We insulted you. We isolated you. But I'm asking anyway. Please. If you ever believed in mercy, if you ever believed in protecting those who can't protect themselves, please help us. The Devourers are coming. We are dying. We need someone who knows how to fight." She took a deep breath. "This is our final transmission. This is our last hope. If you can hear this message, if you can do anything at all, please, help us." The transmission ended. Pelnara looked at her with tears in her own eyes. "It's sent, Commander, though I don't know if they'll even receive it. Earth is so far away." Kelethon nodded slowly. She had done everything she could. Now all she could do was wait and hope. She returned to the viewport and watched the Devourers approach. They moved in perfect formation, each unit coordinated with millions of others, beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a storm come over the ocean, knowing it will destroy everything in its path. Her officers worked quietly at their stations. They were preparing the defenses, but everyone knew it was pointless. They would fight because that's what you do. You don't just give up, but they would lose. That was certain. Lieutenant Kyle Morrison was bored. He sat in the communications center of Lunar Station 7, watching screens that never showed anything interesting. For 3 hours he had been monitoring deep space channels, and for 3 hours absolutely nothing had happened. This was his life now. After joining the Earth Defense Forces with dreams of adventure, he ended up at a listening post on the moon, watching for messages that never came. The galaxy had made it very clear 20 years ago that they wanted nothing to do with humanity. Earth had closed its borders and focused inward. No aliens visited. No aliens called. The universe was empty and silent. Kyle yawned and reached for his coffee. It was cold. Everything was always cold on the moon base. Then his console beeped. He almost ignored it. Probably just another piece of space debris triggering the sensors. But something made him look. A transmission. Deep space origin. Definitely artificial. Kyle sat up straight. He ran the signal through the computers, cleaning up the static and interference. A voice came through, speaking a language he didn't recognize. The computer worked on translation, matching it against the linguistic database from humanity's brief contact with the coalition. A female voice, speaking clearly despite the fear underneath it. Kyle listened once, then again, then a third time, his hands getting cold despite the heated station. "Oh hell," he whispered. He hit the emergency alert button. Within seconds, his supervisor, Commander Lisa Grant, appeared behind him. "Morrison, this better be good. It's 3 a.m. Kyle played the message for her. Commander Grant's face went pale. "How old is this transmission?" "Based on signal degradation, I'd say it was sent about 14 hours ago." "Commander, they're dying. Right now." Grant grabbed the console. "Send this up the chain. Priority Alpha. Get it to Earth Defense Command immediately." "Yes, ma'am." Kyle's fingers flew across the keyboard. The message shot through the communications network, bouncing from relay to relay until it reached Earth Defense Command in Geneva. From there it went to Military Command, Intelligence Services, and finally to the Emergency Cabinet. Within 30 minutes, half the Earth's leadership was awake and listening to an alien begging for help. Admiral Patricia Wells was having coffee in her office when the call came. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and a face full of scars from the Unification Wars. Those had been brutal years when humanity nearly destroyed itself before finally coming together. She had fought in those wars, lost friends in those wars, learned hard lessons about violence and peace and the thin line between them. She listened to the alien's message 3 times, just like Kyle had. Then she stood up and walked to the window. Earth rotated below her orbital station, blue and green and beautiful. The Deathworld, the nightmare planet, the place that made humans what they were. Her aide, Captain Ben Foster, stood nearby. "Admiral, the cabinet is assembling. They want your assessment." "My assessment is that we're being handed a choice, and whichever way we choose, it will define humanity for the next 1,000 years. Within an hour, the emergency cabinet met via secure video link. President Jackson Cole sat in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by his advisors. On screens around him were the faces of the people who ran Earth's defense. Admiral Wells spoke first. "We have a verified transmission from the Valari, a species within the Galactic Coalition. They're under attack by something called the Devourers. Based on their description, it's a machine intelligence that's already destroyed 6 civilizations. They're asking for help." Secretary of State Linda Harper spoke up immediately. "These are the same aliens who rejected us 20 years ago. They called us too violent, too dangerous. They slammed the door in our faces and told us we weren't welcome in their peaceful galaxy. Now they want our help?" "Yes," Admiral Wells said simply. "Then my answer is no. We owe them nothing." President Cole held up his hand. "Let's not make this decision based on hurt feelings. Admiral Wells, what's the strategic situation?" Wells brought up a star map. "The Devourers have consumed 6 coalition worlds. If this Valari commander is right, they're about to make it 7. These machines adapt to any defense. They're self-replicating and apparently unstoppable." Director Marcus Flynn from Intelligence joined in. "Mr. President, if these Devourers can take out advanced civilizations, they won't stop at coalition borders. Eventually they'll find Earth. Better to fight them now, with whatever allies we can get, than wait for them to come to us. Or," Secretary Harper countered, "we let the coalition and the Devourers destroy each other, and Earth stays safe." "That's not who we are," said a new voice. Everyone turned to look at Captain Nina Carver, who commanded the EDS Vengeful, Earth's newest and most powerful warship. She had joined the meeting from her ship in Mars orbit. "Sorry, Mr. President, but I had to say it. We built our civilization on the principle of protecting those who can't protect themselves. That's how we survived on Earth. We took care of each other. We can't just let millions of people die when we have the power to help." President Cole was quiet for a long moment. He looked tired. He had led Earth through the difficult years after the Coalition's rejection, keeping humanity united and focused. Now he faced the hardest decision of his presidency. "Admiral Wells," he said finally, "can we win?" Wells considered the question carefully. "Honestly, I don't know. These devourers sound like nothing we've ever faced. But here's what I do know, they're machines. They run on logic and programming. We're humans. We run on something else, creativity, instinct, stubbornness, and we learned how to fight on a planet that was constantly trying to kill us. If anyone can find a way to beat them, it's us. Director Flynn, what's your recommendation?" Flynn pulled up data on his tablet. "Sir, this is an opportunity. We show the galaxy what humanity really is. Not the monsters they think we are, but the protectors they need. We prove that strength and compassion aren't opposites. And we get intelligence on Coalition technology and territories that we've been blind to for 20 years. President Cole nodded slowly. "Captain Carver, if I give the order, can the fleet deploy immediately?" "Yes, sir. I've got 12 heavy dreadnoughts ready to go, 36 destroyers, 8 carriers with full fighter wings, and 4 transports carrying 10,000 Marines. We can be in hyperspace within 6 hours. 6 hours, the president repeated. He looked at the faces on the screens around him. His advisors, his military commanders, the people who trusted him to make the right choice. "All right," he said. "Here's my decision. We're going to help them, not because they deserve it, not because we owe them anything, but because it's the right thing to do. That's the kind of species we are. That's the kind of species we're going to be." Secretary Harper shook her head but didn't argue further. "Admiral Wells, you have operational command. Assemble the fleet. Rules of engagement are defensive only until we assess the situation. But once you engage, I want you to win. Show them what the Deathworld can do." "Yes, Mr. President. And Admiral, when you get there, send them a message for me. Tell them that humanity doesn't hold grudges. Tell them that we came because someone needed help, and that's enough." The meeting ended. Orders flowed through the military network. Across the solar system, ships began to move. On Mars, Captain Nina Carver walked onto the bridge of the Vengeful. Her crew looked at her expectantly. They had heard rumors, but now they wanted confirmation. "Crew of the Vengeful," she said, her voice carrying through the intercom to every section of the massive ship. "We've received a distress call from an alien civilization. They're dying. They need help. Command has authorized a rescue mission. We deploy in 4 hours." She paused, looking at her officers. "I know what you're thinking. These are the same aliens who rejected us, who called us dangerous. And you're right to think that. But here's the thing. They were wrong about us. They thought we were monsters because we knew how to fight. They didn't understand that we learned to fight to protect each other. Now we're going to prove it." On the command screen, other ships appeared. The Relentless, commanded by Captain Aaron Drake. The Defiant, Captain Sophie Grant's carrier. Dozens of other vessels, each carrying hundreds of crew members. They were the Deathworld fleet, though no one called it that yet. They were the military force of a species that evolved in Hell and learned to thrive there. In Lunar Station 7, Kyle Morrison watched the fleet assemble on his monitors. Commander Grant stood beside him. "You think they'll make it in time?" Kyle asked. "The message was 14 hours old when we received it. That alien commander said they had 6 hours. Kyle, they're already dead." Kyle felt his stomach sink. "Then what's the point?" Grant put a hand on his shoulder. "The point is that we tried. The point is that we answered. And maybe, just maybe, they held on longer than they thought they could. Maybe they're still fighting, and if they are, they're about to learn that they're not alone anymore." The fleet began to jump. One by one, the ships vanished into hyperspace, traveling faster than light toward a world they had never seen, toward a species that had rejected them, toward an enemy they didn't understand. Admiral Wells sat in her command chair, watching the stars stretch and blur as the Vengeful entered hyperspace. Around her, her officers worked efficiently, checking systems and preparing for combat. Kelethon watched another defense station explode. The Devourers had reached the orbital platforms 3 hours ago. One by one, they were falling. Silent explosions bloomed in the darkness like terrible flowers. She had evacuated what civilians she could to the southern continent. Thousands of transports had fled to the surface carrying families and children, but there was nowhere to run, really. Once the orbital defenses fell, the devourers would come for the planet itself. They would consume the oceans, the cities, everything. In a day, maybe 2, Velar Prime would be gone. Commander, Vrenzella said quietly. Station 7 is gone. Station 8 is not responding. We have maybe an hour before they reach us, Kalathon nodded. Her ship, the Luminous Tide, was the last major vessel left. The rest of her fleet was debris. She had 300 crew members, and they all knew they were going to die. But they stayed at their stations. That was something to be proud of, at least. They didn't run. She thought about her message to Earth. Had they even received it? It had been over 20 hours now. No response. Of course not. Why would the humans care about aliens who had rejected them? Commander? Vrenzella's voice changed, sharp with confusion. Hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts emerging. Kalathon's heart sank. More devourers. This was it then. How many? She asked, her voice steady despite everything. 12 large signatures, 36 smaller ones, 8 medium-sized, and, Commander, they're broadcasting an identification signal. What does it say? It says, Earth Defense Forces. For a moment, Kalathon couldn't breathe. She stared at her tactical officer, certain she had misheard. Ships materialized in space. They were nothing like Coalition vessels. Coalition ships were elegant, smooth, designed for efficiency. These were brutal-looking things. All angles and armor plating. They bristled with weapons. They looked like they had been built for war and nothing else. The lead ship was massive, easily twice the size of the Luminous Tide. Dark gray armor covered every surface. Gun ports ran along its sides. On its hull in white letters were the words EDS Vengeful. Kalathon's communications console lit up. A voice came through, speaking Galactic Standard with a strange accent. Valari Flagship Luminous Tide. This is Admiral Patricia Wells of the Earth Defense Forces. We received your SOS. We're here to help. Please transmit all tactical data on the hostile forces. Kalathon tried to speak but couldn't. The words caught in her throat. Pelnara looked at her, waiting for orders. The young officer was crying, her bioluminescence flickering with emotion. Finally, Kalathon found her voice. This is Commander Kalathon of the Velari Defense Fleet. You came, but we rejected you. We called you dangerous. There was a brief pause. Then Admiral Wells responded, and Kalathon heard something in her voice. Not anger, not resentment, something else. Understanding, maybe. You did call us dangerous, Commander, and you were right. We are dangerous, but apparently you thought we were dangerous enough to call when you needed someone who could fight. So let's fight. Send us your tactical data. Kalathon's hands moved automatically. She transmitted everything they had learned about the Devourers, their attack patterns, their adaptation cycles, their strengths and weaknesses, though there seemed to be more strengths than weaknesses. The human fleet didn't waste time. They were already moving into formation, surrounding the Valari ship in a protective sphere. Kalathon watched on her tactical display as the human vessels arranged themselves with military precision. All ships. Admiral Wells' voice came over an open channel. Formation Delta 7. Focus fire on cluster leaders. Marines prep for boarding actions. This is not a drill. Engage when ready. Boarding actions? Kalathon couldn't believe what she was hearing. They were going to board the Devourers? That was insane. That was suicide. The Devourers detected the new arrivals and began to shift their formations. Thousands of units turned away from the orbital stations and moved toward the human fleet. They came in waves, geometric shapes moving in perfect coordination. Then the humans opened fire, and Kalathon saw something she had never seen before. Coalition weapons were precise, energy beams that cut through targets with surgical accuracy, minimum waste, maximum efficiency. Human weapons were something else entirely. The dreadnoughts fired their main guns. These weren't energy weapons. They were metal slugs launched at incredible speeds by magnetic accelerators. The projectiles were moving so fast that when they hit Devourer units, they simply tore through them. The kinetic energy was devastating. Devourer hulls which had shrugged off Coalition beam weapons shattered like glass. By the deep, Mirsolus whispered. What kind of weapons are those? Primitive ones, Kalathon said, but effective. The Devourers tried to adapt. Their hulls began to thicken and reinforce. But the humans were already changing tactics. Missiles streaked out from the destroyers. Not explosive missiles. These released clouds of superheated plasma that washed over the Devourers, melting their armor. Before the machines could adapt to that, the humans switched again. Electromagnetic pulses scrambled the Devourers' quantum processors. Railgun fire from different angles. Chemical explosives. The humans threw everything at them, never using the same attack pattern twice. Kelethan understood. The Devourers adapted by analyzing attack patterns and finding counters. But you couldn't adapt if your enemy never did the same thing twice. The humans were overwhelming the machine's ability to process and respond. One of the human dreadnoughts, the Relentless, did something that made Kelethan's blood run cold. It accelerated directly at a cluster of Devourers and rammed through them. The ship's armored prow crushed 3 units. Point defense guns along its hull fired at close range, shredding others. The Relentless took damage, terrible damage. Its port side was torn open. Atmosphere vented into space. But the ship kept fighting. Kelethan watched in amazement as damage control teams sealed the breaches. The ship had just taken hits that would have destroyed a Valari vessel, and it was still in the fight. What are these ships made of? Frensala asked in awe. Whatever it is, it's stronger than anything we have, Kelethan replied. But the most shocking thing was yet to come. Small craft launched from the human ships, not fighters. Boarding pods. They shot toward damaged Devourer units, latching onto their hulls. They're actually doing it, Mirsola said. They're boarding. Through her sensors, Kelethan could track what happened next. Human soldiers in armored suits cut through the Devourer hulls with plasma torches. They entered the machine vessels. Inside, they planted explosives. Fusion charges. The kind of weapons you use to destroy asteroids. The charges detonated. Devourers exploded from within. Their internal systems overloaded. They're fighting hand-to-hand against machines, Pelnara said, her voice full of disbelief. How is that possible? Kelethan thought about the files she had read. About Earth. About the Deathworld where humans evolved. Where everything was trying to kill them so they learned to kill back. Where giving up meant dying so they never gave up. These humans weren't just fighting the Devourers. They were hunting them. The battle raged for 4 hours. The humans lost ships. Kelethan watched 2 destroyers explode. Their crews gone in instants. She felt each loss like a knife. These people had come to save her world and they were dying for it. But they were winning. The Devourer swarm, which had seemed unstoppable, was breaking apart. The machines tried to retreat to regroup, but the humans pursued. Captain Sophie Grant's carrier, the Defiant, launched wave after wave of fighters. They harried the Devourers, keeping them scattered and unable to coordinate. Finally, the last Devourer unit was destroyed. Space around Velar Prime fell silent. Kelethan sat in her command chair, shaking. Around her, her crew was crying. They were alive. Their world was alive, because humans came. Admiral Wells's face appeared on the main screen. She was an older woman with gray hair and scars on her face. She looked tired but satisfied. Commander Kelethan, Velar Prime is secure. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Admiral Wells, Kelethan began, and then couldn't continue. What do you say to someone who just saved your entire civilization? Wells seemed to understand. It's all right, Commander. We came because you needed help. That's enough, but we rejected you. We insulted you. We called you monsters. The human admiral was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. You did. But you were wrong. We're not monsters, Commander. We're just people who learned how to fight because our world demanded it. And one thing we learned is that strength means nothing if you don't use it to protect those who need protection. She glanced at something off-screen, then looked back at Kelethan. Commander, you said in your message that the Devourers have destroyed 6 other worlds. Is that correct? Yes, 6 coalition planets. Billions dead, then our work isn't done. These machines are going to keep consuming worlds until someone stops them. We didn't come all this way just to save one planet. We need to talk strategy. Because if there's one thing humanity learned on Earth, it's this. You don't win by just defending. You win by taking the fight to the enemy. Kelethan felt something stir inside her. Hope. Real hope. For the first time in weeks. Admiral, I will help in any way I can. My ship, my crew, whatever you need. Good. First, I need you to contact the rest of the Coalition. Tell them. The Galactic Coalition Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 14 species were all trying to talk at once. Some were angry. Some were afraid. Some were simply confused. Ambassador Takar of the Chitara stood on his platform, his insect-like body rigid with anger. This is unacceptable. Humans entered our space without permission. They are a prohibited species. They violated our borders and our laws. They saved the Valari. Elder Shun of the reptilian Soros replied calmly. His old eyes watched Takar with something like disappointment. They did what we could not do. They stopped the Devourers. That doesn't give them the right to act independently. They acted because we asked them to, a new voice said. Commander Kelathan entered the chamber, still wearing her battle-damaged uniform. She had not slept in 30 hours. She didn't care. I sent the message to Earth. I violated council law. If you want to punish someone, punish me. High Counselor Vrentok, leader of the energy-based Lumini, spoke in his echoing voice. Commander Kelathan, you understand that contacting a prohibited species is a serious offense? I understand. I also understand that my world would be dead if I hadn't done it. Every person on Valar Prime gone, and you would all be sitting here debating policy while billions died. The chamber fell silent. Kelathan continued, her voice steady. For 300 years, the Coalition has maintained peace through diplomacy and careful rules. That's beautiful. That's admirable. But the Devourers don't care about our rules. They don't negotiate. They don't compromise. They just consume. And our elegant solutions weren't working. She pulled up a holographic display. It showed the battle at Valar Prime, the human ships ramming through Devourer formations. The Marines boarding hostile vessels, the brutal aggressive tactics that won where careful strategy had failed. Look at this, she said. Really look at it. These humans fought like nothing we've ever seen. They took damage that would destroy our ships and kept fighting. They used tactics we would never consider. They were willing to die to protect a species that rejected them. Ambassador Takar clicked his mandibles. They are violent. They are dangerous. This display proves it. No, Elder Shun said quietly. This display proves they are effective. There is a difference, he turned to address the full council. 20 years ago, we evaluated humanity and found them unsuitable for the Coalition. We saw their weapons and their military culture and we were afraid. But I think we made a mistake. We confused strength with cruelty. We saw that they knew how to fight and assumed they wanted to fight. They do want to fight, Takar argued. Look at their history. Thousands of years of warfare. Yes, Kelathan said. And do you know what else their history shows? Thousands of years of cooperation, of building civilizations, of creating art and music and literature. They fight when they must, but they don't fight for pleasure. They fight to protect. High Counselor Vrentok gestured for silence. This debate can continue, but we have a more immediate concern. The Devourers are still active. 6 worlds are gone. More are threatened. The human fleet is powerful, but they cannot fight this war alone. What do we do? Before anyone could answer, a communication request came through. Admiral Wells was asking to address the council. Absolutely not, Takar said immediately. We do not allow prohibited species in this chamber. I think we should hear what she has to say, Elder Shun replied. She just saved one of our worlds. We owe her at least that much. The vote was close, but finally the council agreed. Admiral Wells appeared as a hologram in the center of the chamber. She wore her uniform, crisp and professional despite having just fought a major battle. She looked around at the assembled species, meeting their eyes without fear or arrogance. Just calm assessment, honorable council members, she began. 20 years ago, my species applied for membership in the Galactic Coalition. You rejected us. You called us too violent, too militaristic, too dangerous. You were right about some of that. We are a military species. We do know how to fight. You want to know why? She brought up an image of Earth, the blue and green planet that looked so peaceful from space. This is our world. It doesn't look dangerous, does it? But Earth has gravity that would crush most of you. Weather that kills in minutes. Thousands of species that produce venom or disease. Predators everywhere. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes. Our planet tried to kill us every single day. She paused, letting that sink in. So we adapted. We became strong because the weak died. We became aggressive because the passive didn't survive. We learned to make weapons because everything around us was already a weapon. We didn't choose violence. Violence was chosen for us by our environment. Admiral Wells looked directly at Takar. But you know what else we learned? We learned to cooperate because no human could survive alone. We learned to protect each other. We learned that strength means nothing if you don't use it to help those who need help. We unified an entire planet of 7 billion individuals who all started as enemies. We built a civilization based on the idea that we're stronger together. She brought up images from the battle at Velar Prime. You see violence in these images. I see protection. You see aggression. I see defense. You see danger. I see hope. We didn't come here to conquer or to dominate. We came because someone asked for help. That's all we needed to hear. The council chamber was absolutely silent now. Every representative was listening. The Devourers are not going to stop, Wells continued. They've taken 6 of your worlds. If we don't act, they'll take more. Eventually, they'll find Earth too. So I'm proposing a joint operation. Human forces will lead the assault. We're built for this kind of fighting, but we need your help. Your sensors are better than ours. Your long-range weapons are more advanced. Your intelligence networks can find the Devourer bases. She looked around the chamber. Work with us. Let us prove that humanity isn't the monster you feared. Let us show you what we really are. High Counselor Vrentok spoke carefully. Admiral Wells, if we agree to this cooperation, what do you want in return? What is Earth's price? Wells smiled slightly. Nothing. We don't want payment. We don't want territory. When this is over, if you still want us to stay away, we will. We're not doing this for profit or power. We're doing it because it's right. Director Marcus Flynn appeared beside Wells in the hologram. He was in civilian clothes, looking more like a professor than an intelligence officer. Honorable Council, he said, I've analyzed the Devourer attack patterns. There are 3 main hive structures. Each hive controls millions of units. They're located in the Carus system, the Delvin Nebula, and near the Outer Rim colonies. If we strike all 3 simultaneously, we can eliminate them before they rebuild. He brought up tactical maps. This is going to be the largest military operation in galactic history. We need every ship, every soldier, every resource the Coalition can provide. And we need to move fast. Every day we wait, the Devourers build more units. The council members looked at each other. This was the moment. The choice that would define everything going forward. Elder Shun spoke first. The Soros will commit our fleet. 20 heavy cruisers and support vessels. Kelethon stood. The Valari offer what remains of our forces. 8 ships and full logistical support. Slowly, other species began to volunteer. Not all of them. The Chitara still refused, Takar arguing that cooperating with humans was too dangerous. But enough. Enough to make the operation possible. High Counselor Vrentok made the formal declaration. The Galactic Coalition authorizes Operation Hammerstrike. Admiral Wells of Earth will have operational command. All participating fleets will coordinate through human leadership. He paused, his energy form flickering. And Admiral Wells, when this is over, we will revisit Earth's application to the Coalition. Perhaps we were too hasty in our judgment. Wells nodded. Thank you, Counselor. We'll try to be worthy of that reconsideration. The meeting ended. Plans were made. Fleets assembled. And throughout Coalition space, word spread. The humans were going to war. The Deathworlders were going after the Devourers. In the human fleet, preparations were underway. Captain Nina Carver stood on the bridge of the Vengeful, reviewing tactical data. Her first officer, Commander Jake Foster, stood beside her. Captain, we're going to be outnumbered about 1,000 to 1 at each target. I know. And we're leading the assault. I know. Just wanted to make sure you knew. Carver smiled. Jake, my great-grandmother, fought in the Unification Wars. She was at the Battle of Moscow when the city was surrounded. Outnumbered 10 to 1. Everyone thought they were dead. Want to know what she did? What? She attacked. Didn't wait for the enemy to come to her. Went straight at them. Broke their formations. Caused chaos. And she won. She looked at the tactical display showing the 3 Devourer hives. Being outnumbered just means the enemy has more targets to worry about. And these Devourers have never fought humans before. They don't know what we're like when we're protecting something. They're about to learn. Across the solar system, similar conversations were happening. On the Relentless, Captain Aaron Drake was briefing his Marines on deep insertion tactics. On the Defiant, Captain Sophie Grant was running her fighter pilots through attack simulations. And on ships from a dozen different species, Coalition soldiers were. Battlegroup Alpha dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Karus system. Admiral Patricia Wells stood on the bridge of the Vengeful, watching the tactical displays light up with hostile contacts. Contact count? she asked calmly. Over 900,000 individual units, Admiral, her tactical officer reported. And that's just what we can see. The hive structure is massive. It's consuming the gas giant for raw materials. Wells nodded. She had expected this. The Devourers had been building for weeks, maybe months. They had unlimited resources and no need for rest. All ships, this is Admiral Wells. Execute attack pattern Ragnarok. We're going straight through them to the hive core. Ignore the small units. They'll chase us, and that's fine. Let them cluster up. 20 human ships accelerated toward the swarm. Behind them, 8 Valari vessels and 12 Soros heavy cruisers followed in support formation. The Devourers reacted immediately. The swarm moved to intercept, a wall of geometric death spreading across space. They had learned from the battle at Velar Prime. Their formations were tighter now. Their coordination was better, but so were the humans. The human dreadnoughts opened fire at maximum range. Kinetic rounds traveling at nearly light speed tore through the leading Devourer units. The machines tried to dodge, but at those speeds there was no dodging. You either had armor thick enough to take the hit or you died. Most of them died. But there were so many. For every Devourer destroyed, 10 more took its place. The swarm surrounded the human fleet like a closing fist. Deploy countermeasures, Wells ordered. The human ships released clouds of metallic chaff and electromagnetic decoys. The Devourers' targeting systems struggled to sort real ships from false signatures. In that moment of confusion, the humans changed their attack vector. Instead of slowing down, they accelerated. The Vengeful led the charge, its armored prow aimed at the heart of the Devourer formation. Behind it, the other dreadnoughts formed a wedge. They hit the swarm like a hammer. The impact was tremendous. Devourers were crushed, scattered, destroyed. The human ships took damage. Terrible damage. The Vengeful's forward armor was torn away. Secondary explosions rocked the lower decks. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches, but the ship kept going. On the bridge, Wells gripped her command chair as the vessel shook. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered. She could hear the sound of emergency bulkheads slamming shut throughout the ship. Damage report. Forward sections are compromised. We've lost weapons array 3. Armor at 40%. Casualties on decks 4 through 7. Keep moving. We're not stopping. Behind the Vengeful, Captain Aaron Drake's Relentless was taking even worse punishment. The entire port side was gone, torn away by Devourer weapons. But Drake kept his ship in formation, firing everything he had. In engineering, his crew worked in conditions that would kill most species. No atmosphere. No gravity. Temperature extremes from fires and coolant leaks. But they were human. They had trained for this on Earth, where survival meant adapting to impossible conditions. Chief Engineer Pete Collins welded a damaged plasma conduit with one hand, while holding himself in place with the other. His suit was damaged. He was losing air. He had maybe 5 minutes. He finished the weld in 3 and made it to a safe section before his air ran out. Engineering to bridge, he reported. Reactor stable. We can keep fighting, Drake smiled grimly. That's what I like to hear. The human fleet punched through the Devourer swarm and reached the hive structure. It was enormous. A city-sized construct built from consumed ships and stations and planets. It pulsed with energy, constantly building more Devourer units. All ships target the core support structures, Wells ordered. Bring that thing down. Missiles and railgun fire hammered the hive. The structure was tough, built from compressed matter and quantum-locked materials. Human weapons chipped away at it, but slowly. Too slowly. Admiral, Commander Jake Foster said. At this rate, it will take hours to crack that thing. The Devourers are regrouping. They'll overrun us before we can destroy it. Wells looked at the tactical display. He was right. The Devourer units that had been scattered were reforming. They were adapting to human tactics, learning. In minutes, they would attack in overwhelming numbers. She made her decision. Prepare boarding teams. We're going in. Foster stared at her. Ma'am, that structure is hostile. Unknown internal layout. Automated defenses. It's a death trap. Then it's perfect for Marines. Get me Colonel Ryan Peters. Colonel Peters was already in his drop pod when the call came. He led the 5th Marine Battalion, 200 of the toughest soldiers humanity had ever produced. They had trained in Earth's deserts and jungles and frozen wastes. They had practiced in the crushing gravity that broke most species. They were ready for anything. Colonel Peters, Admiral Wells's voice came through his helmet comm. "I need you to board that hive and plant charges on the central processor." "Can you do it?" Peters checked his weapon and his squad. He saw Sergeant Linda Cross giving him a thumbs up. Corporal Jake Morrison was already loading explosive charges into his pack. Private Emma Stone was checking her plasma cutter. "Admiral, we were born for this. Give us 10 minutes. We'll bring that thing down. 10 minutes. Good luck, Colonel." The drop pods launched. 50 armored Marines in individual pods shot toward the hive structure. Devoured defenses opened fire. Some pods were destroyed. Peters watched the casualty indicators light up as Marines died before even reaching the target. But most made it through. The pods impacted the hive's outer surface and deployed cutting charges. Holes opened in the structure. The Marines went in. Inside was nightmare territory. The walls were alive, constantly shifting and repairing themselves. Automated defenses popped up from nowhere. The gravity fluctuated wildly. The atmosphere, if you could call it that, was toxic and filled with nanoparticles designed to break down organic matter. The Marine suits held. Barely. Peters led his team through a corridor that seemed to pulse with hostile intent. His helmet display showed the path to the central processor, but the hive kept changing its internal layout. Passages closed. New ones opened. It was trying to trap them. "Keep moving," Peters ordered. "Don't stop for anything." They encountered devourer units inside the hive. Small ones built for internal defense. The machines moved fast, climbing walls and ceilings. They attacked with cutting lasers and molecular disruptors. The Marines fought back with everything they had. Plasma rifles, shotguns, grenades. When ammunition ran out, they fought hand-to-hand. Private Chris Murphy crushed a devourer unit with his armored fists, then used its own cutting tool as a weapon against others. Sergeant Linda Cross led her squad through a section filled with corrosive gas. The stuff ate through their suit seals. She watched her air supply drop. 30 seconds. 20. 10. She found the other side of the chamber with 5 seconds to spare and pulled her team through. 2 of them didn't make it. She marked their positions for recovery later and kept moving. There was no time to grieve now. Colonel Peters reached the central processor after 8 minutes of fighting. It was a massive structure, pulsing with quantum calculations. This was the brain of the hive, the intelligence coordinating millions of devourer units. He placed the antimatter charge right next to it. 50 megatons, enough to vaporize a small moon. "Charges planted," he reported. "All teams evacuate now. We have 2 minutes." The Marines fought their way back toward the exit points. Some took wrong turns in the changing maze. Some were cut off by devourer units. Some were trapped when passages sealed. Peters made it back to his drop pod. So did Sergeant Cross and Private Stone. But as he looked at the casualty list, he saw names he knew. Friends, good soldiers, Corporal Jake Morrison. Still inside, Private Emma Stone saw it too. "Sir, we have to go back. No time." "I'm sorry." The timer hit 0. The antimatter device detonated inside the hive. The explosion was contained within the structure, but the energy release was catastrophic. The central processor was vaporized. Every system connected to it overloaded. The hive tore itself apart from within. Outside, Admiral Wells watched the massive structure collapse. It broke into pieces, each piece exploding in secondary detonations. The devourer units throughout the system simply stopped moving. Without the hive's controlling intelligence, they were just debris. Battle Group Alpha to command. "Target destroyed. Hive 1 is down." Similar reports came in from the other battle groups. Captain Nina Carver reported success at the Delvin Nebula. Captain Sophie Grant confirmed the destruction of the Outer Rim hive. All 3 Devourer command structures were gone. The threat was over, but the cost was heavy. The human fleet lost 6 ships. The Relentless was so damaged it had to be towed back to base. 2,000 Marines were dead. Another 5,000 were wounded. Admiral Wells stood in the Vengeful's medical bay looking at the rows of wounded soldiers. They had tubes and bandages and medical equipment keeping them alive. Some would recover, some wouldn't. All of them had volunteered knowing the risks. She thought about the names of the dead, young people from Earth who would never see home again. They had died light years from everything they knew, fighting for aliens who had once rejected humanity. A communication came through. It was from Velar Prime. Commander Kelathan's voice was thick with emotion.